Ready? Three, two, and one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Red Thoughts with Perry Picasso. I am your host, Perry Picasso, and today I am joined by a lovely guest.
Briar, Rosa. Yay!
Woo! Welcome to the podcast, Briar. Wait, before I begin, my pronouns are he, she, they, and yours?
Him,
He, him,
he,
slay.
him. Yep, yep,
Okay, so
yep.
Briar has an amazing piece right now at the Desde los Cielos group show, curated by Emmanuel Camacho Larios and myself at the Cheech. It is on right now until March 16th. By the time this video goes up, it might be up still. We'll see.
Okay.
Allegedly. And you have a piece in there titled
Cielito lindo.
Woo! It is a gorgeous, gorgeous
Okay.
piece. Which I'm excited to learn more about. But before we do that, I want to get to know you a little more.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, please tell me, like, growing up, were you always somebody who was into the arts, or was it something that developed over time? Like, how has that journey been for you?
Yeah, I was fortunate that I had parents that uh, brought me to museums and art galleries, and
Okay.
since I was a young age, grade school, maybe 6, 7,
Hmm.
and so from that point, I was kind of exposed to art in paintings, classical paintings, Van Gogh's, um, Basquiat's, Picasso. But what was really talking to me was just uh, this kind of ideal, like what I guess you could say like masterpieces look like in my little brain.
Hmm.
And so from there, as a child, I would some friends and I would be drawing and would be kind of competitive. We would draw from comic books
Hmm.
actually, Marvel comics, DC comics, all the musculature of all like the superheroes, and so that motivated me too. So that wasn't just this exposure from my parents, where they'd take me to these museums and watching these nice films and going to plays, but it was also this kind of and I explained like this little bubble I had with my friends where we would draw with each other, but also kind of challenge each other and kind of who can do the best, I guess you
Hmm.
could say, or so. Um,
What
and
did
so
you
that's kind of
guys
where it
use
started.
as best? Like, what was your measurement of best?
I was in it like we I
Was it like most
who could draw
realistic?
Batman better, kind of, yeah,
Okay,
kind of
okay.
like who could be like oh he or yeah, that's hard. Like we're in our little child, brain, like seven,
Yeah.
8, where we're like, who could?
Or
Anthony did drew Batman over the weekend. It looks really good. Now I need to do Batman, or
okay,
like
okay,
better than he did. And so there was all this like effort and concentration and struggle with the just trying to do something realistic, or like
okay.
these musculature and anatomy of of a person. In my little brain, like I didn't know other shading, or I have to kind of like develop it myself in a way.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where it started. I felt like that's where my journey into art, and when usually people ask me that question, it came from that point. And I usually don't say that. I usually say, "Oh, I was in grade school and I started drawing," but there was like this kind of little thing that went happened, the competitive
Hmm.
nature with my friends and I, but also my parents taking me to like the museums,
Right.
and that's where I was like, I want to do that.
Okay.
And so I was fortunate from that point to have really good high school teachers that encouraged me. And that's where I kind of learned more formal, like painting and
Right.
acrylic paints, and how to graph an image and how to shade, how to different types of graphite pencils. That's when I was more exposed to like um, certain the foundations of art making.
Hmm.
And so that also has influenced me too, just having really good instructors.
Okay. Um, I still want to go back to that kid thing. I think that's so cute. Like you had just sort of like a little artistic league of your own.
Yeah, it was like yeah, because we were com- um, like you could collect comic books and stuff, and I
Okay.
felt like um
Did you ever make your own comic book?
I never did. I never thought it was good enough. I feel like it was more like I didn't understand dialogue, or like people like conversations at the time.
Okay.
It was more like I having this appreciation for this trying to develop the anatomical proportions of the human form. Like I didn't know at the time,
Hmm.
but that's what and so I understand sometimes in comic books there's some like the um somebody writes
Right.
it, and then like somebody
Like.
draws it and somebody inks it. Like there's different kind of creatives
Hmm.
that are put in,
That
or
work
somebody does it
together.
all together.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's fascinating. But that kind of got me into my interests in arts kind of started from there, from
Okay.
comic books, and also just from being exposed to um, classical paintings and sculpture, degas and stuff.
Do you have an art piece that you remember when you went to the museum and like that the first one that like took your breath away?
At the Cheech Museum
Just
or in
in
it, or
any museum.
oh, and actually, yeah, it was a I would distinctly remember it was a Degas sculpture,
Okay.
and it was a ballerina that he had done, and so he had done a lot of ballerina pastel
Yeah.
drawings, and I believe they had one too, but it was a particular sculpture, and
Hmm.
it was I think from my looking at or drawing comic books and this kind of graphic form, ink and different stylizations of different comic different types of people, and then to see like this Degas or this sculpture
Hmm.
and a bronze cast, and it wasn't very it wasn't a massive sculpture. um it was on a pedestal, and I feel like that was I want my dad bought me a print at the front desk, and I had it on my wall in my room and
Hmm.
everything, and so I feel like that one I will never forget, and I had
Okay.
always respect. It's been interesting that it's a sculpture,
Hmm.
you know. um
Interesting. Because you don't do you do very many sculptures or do you do
Uh,
mostly like
well,
paper?
I do like those the bags and stuff that I've made, and
Okay.
the candy bags, and I do consider those sculptures even though they are mixed media. But something about creating something physical and putting it in a physical space in the white cube or the gallery space, and how people interact with it. Um, and I think that's fascinating to me. And like making something, and what are you trying to say? How do you want people to feel? And it's a little bit different than a painting.
Hmm.
But painting also has really interesting things you could do with, and the same thing as drawing and printmaking.
Hmm.
So
If you could live in any of the museums you visited, which would you want to stay in forever?
I museums are interesting because there's you learn about how those pieces came to be in those museums when
Yeah.
like how do they got them, and that kind of
How
bothers you
they
as an adult. You're like, well, but
Yeah.
if I had, or it's somebody a rich person's collection, and they decided to do, but then you try not to let that bother you, where you're just trying to enjoy the experience. And then like, oh, when I was a child, that I didn't know all those things, but as an adult, you kind of do. And but
That
if
yeah.
I did have to answer the question, no, I would actually say the Broad
Me
Museum.
too.
Yeah, it's just because because it's so
That's
amazing. It's
my
amazing.
favorite.
It's just
Oh
so
my
many things.
god.
It's so many
The architecture
the
in there.
architecture. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's my favorite museum. Okay, good choice.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it's when if people have friends that are not art friends, and we try to let's go to a museum, that's one I would take them to. And I
Yeah.
do like the Getty too. I do love um the till you take a little
The train.
trolley, yeah,
Or
up to there's this momentum building, to get to this
yeah.
point, and it's like a ride, and then there's art, the
It,
architecture of the plant, the stone, but then you wondering all the bad things about, like why those things are there, but just the if I had to choose, it'd still be the Broad, but I do the Getty
yeah.
as a second.
Okay. Those are very so I think I would say the same. Broad and then the get I love the Broad.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, and there's so much
Ah,
work to look at, and you always see something um different, or kind of, like there's some you could stare at some of those art pieces for so long, and
yeah,
a different,
for
yeah.
sure. But I do hear you though on the institutions and how strange. I remember I went to the Met recently, and when I was there, they had I think it was the Met or was it the Natural History? One of the two. They had like an exhibition of the pyramids of Egypt, and like they had like actual stones from the pyramids there.
Mhm.
And I remember walking there, and I was like, I these were not made for my eyes. Why
Mhm.
the fuck can I see this?
Mhm.
Why can I, for the price of 17.25, walk in here and touch a stone from Egypt? That literally was like, that should not be allowed.
Should I, yeah, and it just you're who's that money going to? You're like it. Yeah, and there's all these kind of conflicting emotions you have, but then at
Yeah.
you're just I'm uh, I'm an artist, and I'm trying to have an appreciation. See, I'm grateful that it's also part of me. It's also grateful that it's there, that I don't,
Right.
but it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be. It should be where in its rightful place.
Yeah.
But
No, for
so there,
sure.
as you go to galleries and museums, and you start to learn about certain things, That does play with you as an adult, I feel. But
Yeah, for
to go
sure.
back to that childlike wonder that I had with my parents, that
Yeah.
if I had to stay a day, live in a view, oh,
Mhm.
bro, and can I have a little room in the
Right.
downstairs and just have an all day
Just look through their vaults.
lifetime pass? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I their vault must be
Even yeah,
crazy. F My dream.
yeah, that's good.
Um,
Very nice, very nice.
okay. And, so did you go to school for art or no?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I had mentioned I think the academic side of my art making did start in high school, and I did have some really kind of really good art instructors, and that just pushed me. But they also were kind of hard on me, and
Okay.
I appreciated that. It was more like I feel like they already, since I had been drawing for a few years, and they kind of
Mhm.
saw it, and they were like, "No, we're gonna um, pressure him in different ways," and
Okay.
so
They're more of just, like, trying to push you like a little
guide me, and
nudge, a
yeah, nudge,
guide.
like
Okay.
maybe they felt I already have certain
Got it. They
um,
weren't haters
oh, no,
trying to
yeah,
be
which is
like,
thankful, yeah, I
"Okay."
also like, and so that as an instructor now, I kind of think about them, and my teaching style is similar to them, and so that's
Mm,
interesting. But to go back to the education part, um, they also were kind of, "You should do something in art, whatever it is, do something
mhm.
in art." So I actually wanted to get into animation,
Okay.
um, as opposed to, like become a
Like
painter.
mhm,
And it was more so that my instructors were always realistic with me, even when I got into Valley College in San Bernardino, and they're always fairly realistic, where they say, it's really hard to make a living as a painter or a or at the time.
mhm.
It's different now, it's social media, um, different, a lot of different ways
Right,
of
different
making money,
avenues, yeah.
little side hustles and stuff that you got to do. But there was like my young mind was just like, okay, it's not that it's impossible, just very hard. So maybe I should think about an occupation or an art form that I could still have, I still enjoy, but that might have like an actual 9 to 5, I guess you could
Right, a
say,
monetary
monetary income.
mhm.
Yeah, and I could still use my skill set. And so animation to me was something I wanted to get into.
Hmm,
And interestingly enough, Valley College had an animation class, and I took it,
okay.
and still really it was back in the they limited like a 3D programming there, and so I actually failed it. I failed the class because I didn't.
Real.
It was just crazy in a like this situation where those of you that are old, like that, have worked with these apples that had zip drives, and zip drives were used to save your data, save your project, and they're prone to crashing. And so if the computer crashed, your work was gone, or like it's something like if the the disk
Oh, wait,
wasn't
is
in
it
there.
the one that you have to, like, the floppy disk?
It's like a floppy, but it's a thick one. It's not called a zip drive, and they only
Okay.
those but it was like the way of putting these big
Uh-huh.
projects on, and then became like DVDs and stuff. But
Okay.
anyway, when it wasn't my fault, I was there, first student there, the last person to I loved it. I loved learning and creating this thing in a 3D space
Mhm.
environment, and my project crashed. I lost it like 2 weeks before it's due. We worked on it the whole semester, and I had to rush something, and then the instructor failed me, and so I had this conversation where like, you ruined, like, you they I don't know, I don't and that plays a part in my
I'd be
education, that's
pissed.
kind of, oh yeah, I was mad. I went to her in summer school, and approached her, and was like, "How can you do that? How could you saw me like it like have this, there was no flexibility, no communication, it just automatic fail. You messed up my GPA already." And and that, to be honest, like that kind of turned me off to animation. And I as
Girl,
and I
literally,
got and
I
I yeah.
that's
That, and so that
crazy.
plays a you think about all these things later on in life, but I do feel like things happen for a reason too. And
Mhm.
if I got into that, maybe I would have been successful, maybe I would have been doing other
Mhm.
thing, but I enjoy where I'm at now, and all these things that have happened, and the work that I make, uh, you know, um, paintings, sculptures, drawings, prints. I enjoy it
Okay.
absolutely. Um,
So after that, did you say fuck animation and then transition to, like, painting, or did you go
yeah,
through the whole animation program?
it was more like we're because it's still a community college, so we're
Okay.
trying to take like
Your
transfer,
GEDs.
yeah, the
Mhm.
GED. But actually, I wanted to go to art school, and
Okay.
so that art center, the
Mm,
Pasadena, and I felt like I loved all their painters that came out of there.
okay.
Natalia Fabia, all these different massive painters at the time, and like featured on Juxtapoz magazine. I was also consuming that, like art magazines
Mhm.
and stuff, collecting those. And every time I like this painter, they'd be like, they're from Art Center, College of Design. I'm like, well, I want to go there. I think I'm good enough, or I think I want to try.
Mhm.
And so when you're at Valley College or community college, a lot of times those units don't transfer over, especially when it's the general education.
Right.
The private school wants you to take their math and history courses, which I don't agree with that, because then it's like they basically have to try. So I don't know. It's an interesting process,
Yeah.
but anyways, I just took a lot of painting and drawing, like all painting and drawing at Valley College, um, until I felt I was developing my portfolio to get into the program.
Mhm.
And so another thing they told me was that they weren't going to accept you right out of high school,
Mm.
teenagers. If you're now, it's really interesting because now people do like I think it's like I've met people that have done it like so, but I just remember it was interesting. They told my class because we did a field trip over there and we
Mhm.
went to Otis too, which was a great school. Um,
Oh, this is a
Cal Arts,
slave.
Cal Arts was
Mhm.
great. And they were like, we don't recommend that you come here right after high school. And I understand because of the financial part of it, like it's such a massive commitment and you have to be confident in what you want to major in because you want to take out a $130,000 loan and then decide halfway through the program, I don't want to be a painter anymore. I want to do this now or design, which is not a bad thing, but it's like a massive trend. Now you got to take all these other
Right.
classes. So I kind of understand what they're saying, but I kind of took it to heart. So at the time, I was just taking all the art classes at Valley, full-time student still, and then I developed my portfolio and I submitted it and I got accepted at the art center.
Slay.
However, another something else
Oh.
happened. Yeah, it was
Oh.
good. I was happy, very happy.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but the last I
The
didn't know
plot
how
thickens.
I didn't
Mhm.
know how the financial part worked. I'm just like, well, when is like when could I'll just sign a I'll sign a application. I'll sign my life away. This is my dream. Like I'll live there. I'll live in the parking lot. I
Right.
had to, I'll do whatever it takes. I was gonna commute from San Bernardino, take the Amtrak over there, whatever it takes. And I got a job at a casino, and I was working graveyard, and I was gonna make it work.
Right.
The first week I started, and the last day it was like a week long orientation, and the last day was the financial aid day. And they're just like, you don't have any credit. You don't have, what? I'm like 20 years old. 20. Of course I don't. You don't have. You need a co-signer. My parents had their own financial problems. Like they couldn't co-sign for me, and they're like, can you ask an aunt or uncle? And I'm like, I'm not gonna ask an aunt or uncle to sign 100K loan,
Right.
let alone a car loan. So it was basically like you can't afford it, like so I had to drop out and go back to Valley College and go and finish my transferable units. And that was another like what
I
like
wanna cry
I was
for
there. I
you.
was there. I
Oh
had
my
my student
god.
pass and everything and I was there for a week. I was a student at Art Center for a week.
I wanna cry.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my god,
know.
I'm so sorry.
But no, I do feel everything does happen for a reason. I would have gotten my BA, but I would have been in massive debt. Like I went back to Valley, finished my transferable units, and I transferred to UCR. And
Damn. Okay.
I think things happen, the way they
Yeah.
should be,
No, for
so
sure.
I love the work that I make. I love what I do now.
Okay.
But yeah, UCR um is interesting that where they're they're more of a conceptual school, conceptually, a lot of installation work, which
Mhm.
is great. And so for me, coming from a community college where it's more, I'm learning how to paint and learning how to
Like technical?
technical stuff, and their um, the concept is more important than the function or the
Mhm.
technique. And so I wasn't used to that through
For undergrad or grad?
undergrad.
They had an undergrad art program?
Yeah, I got my BA there. Mhm.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, they have the MFA too, and
Interesting.
mhm. I would I I'm fortunate. And that's why I say I'm fortunate because I wouldn't think the way I do now if it wasn't
Mhm.
for that program. They really challenged me and I had lucky I had some great instructors
Hmm.
that put me on to. these different artists, and that's actually when I started sculpting
Okay.
and making more taking things and that already exist and subverting them,
Right.
or the idea of subversion, or idea of appropriation, or the idea of taking things and just twisting them a bit, and
Right.
like it, and it kind of um, and I explain it. Um, I
So,
because they didn't have like tradition. I when I took their sculpture, I thought it'd be like clay. I'm gonna
mhm.
make a form, and
Right.
it wasn't. It was more like, oh no, you have a project and it's gonna be invisibility, and you're gonna have to make a not make a you can't bullshit. You have to make something about it. You can't just say this. I have this. I made a dog here. You have
Right.
to make something, and there was so many different. The student, like everybody did something so great. This interpret it differently.
Mhm.
And so to me, that was all the projects were like the photography was like that. The painting was like that. Painting was abstract expressionism,
Okay.
and I understand like process of layering the canvas, building your canvas, layering it, spending time with it, applying paint, taking paint away, applying more paint, adding set, throwing stuff at it, taking it away. And the process of that, you find something. So it was a very fascinating, and I
Okay.
enjoyed my experience there.
That's
So
cool. I think that similarly, UCLA is very conceptual and theory.
yeah, hmm.
Not a lot of technical thing. But I remember like being so pissed when I got there because I was like, "What the fuck? I wanted to learn how to paint,
Yeah.
not why is paint." But
Yep.
like, I don't
Mhm.
know. Now looking back at it, similar. I'm like, I'm actually really grateful for that because it completely changes the way you think about making art
Yep.
and
Yeah.
producing it.
No, that's exactly the experience. I thought I'm gonna learn how to go back to that Degas sculpture. I'm gonna
Right.
how to sculpt the form, and no, it was different, and it was completely and it's not a bad thing. It was just a different process of thinking,
Hmm.
and I appreciated my time there, and I absolutely get like there was a shell shock. I
Yes.
thought, oh, I took a painting class, and like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to paint the form, developing the figure, and because that's what I wanted to do. And then it was so like, no, this is abstract expressionism. Can you just do it for me? I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
try it. This,
Okay.
but
So then, since graduating right now, you are a professor, right? Am I
yeah. So
okay?
after UCR, I went into the grad program at Cal State San Bernardino,
Okay.
and got my MFA, and that also challenged me in different ways. And
Mhm.
I going in there again, I had this idea like I'm gonna make I'm gonna be a painter. I'm gonna
Mhm.
make paintings. And because it's a 3-year program, and the third year you have a thesis, a solo show,
Right.
and so you're developing work for that solo show. And I felt like at the time, I just want all paintings, all
Hmm.
different. I didn't know what they were gonna be, but I just envisioned this gallery of paintings, and it changed. Like after three, it really changed the last year, and it became like, well, the 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 professors and a lot of you're meeting a lot of artists, visiting artists, and a lot of times they're kind of pushing you in different directions, and they're like you have your little studio space, and you have your drawings and paintings on the wall, and they'll kind of tell you what they think of it, but also like kind of things if that's a good or the how do you say if it's a good
Like crit.
good crit, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And then you're also having crits,
Right.
rotating crits, critiques. So you're getting all this information, and that slowly changed my. Okay, now people are telling me to challenge myself, and that's not a
Mhm.
bad thing. It's just now, okay, now I'm going to take what learned from UCR, but also like I still want to do what I want to do. So I developed. I wanted to make work with specifically like paintings, drawings, sculpture, and prints,
Mhm.
printmaking, and so. Is there and I that was can I do all those things? And so that kind of actually led into certain pieces I had that are in the area now, like
Mhm.
at the REM or the Cheech. Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
great.
What was your thesis show on?
Um, it was called Bailando. It was like to dance
Okay,
like this
bailando.
it was kind of like this idea of these ideas that danced in my mind, and that's why
Okay.
I it changed so much because it happened during the pandemic in 2020, and so our my
Oh.
show got pushed back several months. 'Cause it was supposed to be in March, and that's when, like, literally, like,
That's
everything shut
literally
down,
when
and
lockdown.
so we
Oh
got pushed so
shit.
that
Okay.
summer, like, it was horrible, like, the world was changing, things were go
Right.
it was a catastrophe, and all this everybody's depressed, and it wasn't just it was all sorts of things going on in the world, and, that changed things that I was making, and so I was making pieces that were interactive and um,
Can't have that.
kind of like the kind of humorous, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
A lot of it became more humorous as
Okay.
not serious. I made, like, for instance, a mirror piece that was reflective of like a High Times magazine.
Okay.
And so that was kind of like humorous in a way where it was like this. I'm referencing like these pieces that were in museums. Somebody did Time magazine, like an our famous artist that's in, I believe, the LACMA,
Mhm.
where you look at it, your own
And it's, like,
image.
screen printed on there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what if I did a High Times? Wouldn't that be fun? Like, and just put some people have this interaction with it, and take a picture, they can't take
Mhm.
selfies. I've made multiple ones so far, and I've made multiple mirror pieces from that. That was one piece, but a lot of it, the another piece that was referencing the taped banana. I taped the
Okay.
Modelo on the wall, like a bottle. And so I understand the absurdity of the banana, but I also really like it. I appreciate what the artist was thinking and challenging the I get it. You're
I get it.
UCR,
I
UCLA,
get
UCR.
it.
Okay, I get what he's doing. There's like this frustration with the art where, like, I'm gonna bullshit this, and and it worked, and it he took a get.
But we're still talking about
We're
it.
still talking about, yeah. So I like that too, and I did so there was these physical pieces where it changed. It wasn't how when I it wasn't how I thought it would be when I started, like, and I
Okay, right.
envisioned all paintings. I had one paint, or no, I'm sorry, I had two paintings in there,
Okay.
but I had all these bigger
Mm.
pieces. I did a massive wall painting. Um, a lot of the work was about nostalgia.
Okay.
A lot of the work was oh, the reason for that was because as I was working with these different mediums, drawing, painting, I specifically going back to drawing,
Mm.
and maybe we'll get into the drawing at the Cheech. The piece at the Cheech was that I hadn't drawn in a long time. So
Mhm.
UCR, like, I had taken some life drawing classes, but I hadn't really. It'd been like 4 or 5 years. We're
Wow.
talking about since I was a child. I
Yeah.
used to draw a lot, and so to go into the grad program, that took another 3 years for me to get into the program. I hadn't touched a pencil in a long time, so I was like, you know what, this I'm at what the instructors would challenge me. What are you trying to say? What do you want to do with this medium? And a professor from Cal State Dominguez Hills, Devin Suno, actually said some very really, really good advice. And he was like, just find your authenticity. You're great at all these things, but just find your form of authenticity. And I
Mhm.
I understand what he was saying with that. And so I felt like I grew up in the '90s era, and that a lot of the '90s film, music, and comic books and this media um, had a massive influence on my mind.
Mhm.
Just growing up, it was because you're just exposed to. You're watching it MTV you're watching TV every day. That was like your social media. The first thing you
Yeah.
wake up is you look at
The
the phone. Yeah,
cartoons.
cartoons,
Mhm.
and it's flat. Everything's like extreme, and the idea of the extreme, and so I was like, well, what if I make work like that, like, or try to reference that era, or try
Mhm.
because that was when I was drawing. So I'm kind of reinterpreting this point in my life with this medium at this later stage as a grad student. So that's kind of where a lot of those pieces came from. And so the High Times mirror piece also kind of came from like a liquor store, like going to the liquor store and getting uh getting a Gatorade or something, but you're looking at the magazine rack, and there's like these magazines you're not supposed to look at, and the High Times it's like an adult theme so it's I don't know, it's very fascinating to me.
Mhm.
And I have made other pieces about that experience of going to a liquor store and spending time in a liquor or in the area about the neighborhood. The last show at the Cheech, I had the painting about that experience. So again, I think that's kind of what I'm fortunate that I'm at an age where I'm able to draw from my personal experience and to kind of interpret it
Mhm.
now. Whereas I felt like when I was younger, like at 19, 20, and I got into um, art center, I wouldn't have been making the same work, and that's what I meant. Like, everything happens for a reason. I probably wouldn't have been a very strong artist or
Mhm.
making strong work. That's how I needed those things that occur,
Mhm.
the frustrations and all that. Like, that's there, sure, but like I have this life experience to draw from and make
Yeah.
work about it.
All these challenges and these growths that you were forced into.
Yeah, and it's just like, I,
Mhm.
I now what are we gonna do, kind of thing, and so That's good, so that's I feel like, I'm at a point where I'm taking all that and making, hopefully good work with it.
Well, I think
Yeah.
so. And speaking of good work, would love to now chat about the piece you have right now at the Cheech. So I'm gonna read your little blurb.
Yes, please.
Oh wait, you were telling me about this. I cannot pronounce. So for those of you at home, I'm gonna butcher the fuck out of this, and I'm so sorry to mi gente latina. Okay, so Cielito Lindo, Heavenly One by Briar Rosa. I'm having trouble already.
Yeah, you could just read the description, that'd
Okay.
be good.
This piece reimagines the timeless Aztec love story of Popocatépetl
Mhm.
and
It's a
I- it's
Sachuatl.
Itzachhuatl,
Yeah, that's very hard, Aztec word.
symbolizing the eternal connection between the two legendary figures. The artwork intricately weaves the lover's tale with modern symbols of separation, barbed wire, and offense. The figures, depicted with striking vulnerability and elegance, are intertwined in a dreamlike composition. Above them, a skeletal barbed wire fence looms, while the barbed wire at the base suggests both protection and imprisonment. The, the delicate line work and thoughtful composition capture the tension between love and suffering, life and death, and the enduring bond that transcend these barriers.
Mhm. Yes.
Slay.
So, seeing that, the pen
Hmm.
drawing, was done with a big pen and, on some nice drawing paper. Um, that when you and Emma had approached me about the group show and the idea of making work, about I've I interpret it like extraterrestrial alien, but like the idea of being an alien, like like I don't- like how could I don't know, like for some reason this image came up to me.
Hmm.
But also since I was already making work about the era I grew up in, this image of the Aztec warrior holding this princess
Is it the one where
has
she's
been
like draping
she's
over
draped
him?
over,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
okay.
a iconic image in
It
our culture,
is. Yeah.
but it's on like ponchos and blankets and
Sculptures.
sculpture and
Yeah.
painting, and there's usually like 2 to 3 really well-known paintings,
Hmm.
but it's always usually the same. It's always like this masculine warrior, and the princess is kind of like,
Like,
well, she's past spot
right.
like um and I felt like, again, going back to the subversion of art making, or kind of like taking these things and how can I reinterpret them.
Hmm.
And I love this. I love the idea. I have
It's
the
an iconic image.
the blanket on my bed right now. Like I love um the idea, and it's very like powerful to me, and it makes it motivating. But I also felt like there was a point thinking about art in the Chicano culture in particular, where it can be this kind of machismo, toxic machismo. There was this momentum of like, well, I understand some people they need that kind of machismo in like art and media, Chicano art, where it empowers them, but then
Right.
it becomes toxic, where like
Yeah.
the you're which I didn't agree with. And so, like, how can I reinterpret this image that has always been portrayed in this particular way? And to take the princess into to place her in a way, as if she's floating like an angel,
Hmm.
where she's the main focus, and have as the warrior, um, kind of in this vulnerable. He does vulnerable position. He's in a fetal position because he's lost his princess, and
Right.
where he's not hyper muscular, he's just in a I felt like I wanted to portray this image different than it has been. But also that she appears floating. Like he's always gonna be like a how to say
Like he's
there
gonna ground her, or
or like kind of like a there I think there was an image I saw where he was uh at her feet in a
okay.
way. And so I was like, well, what if I think of this aerial view, like a bird's eye view of where it looks like she's floating,
Hmm.
and he's kind of hovering above her, and but he's in a fetal. So there's all these different things that I was thinking about, and then how to make it, and then to go back to drawing, like the pen drawing of when I used to draw when I was young, and I collected lowrider magazines too, and not wasn't just comic books. And something I forgot to mention was like we would try to draw the cars and lowrider,
Hmm.
like in the chrome off the
Hmm.
fenders of like a '64 Impala, and it was very challenging. That was another thing that challenged, like who can do that better, and but so this imagery and the idea of lowrider culture and there were kind of um were thoughts on my mind of making work about it. And I felt like the pen joint to go into using things like I thought about making it look like a flash tattoo image of
Hmm.
like a
Like the purple, the.
like when you look at flash or tattoo flash on a
Hmm.
paper, it's like flat, kind of flat. And I also kind of when I was thinking about like printmaking,
Hmm.
um, kind of have like the image, and then it's like another one. You pick like which one you want, like
Hmm.
flash on the wall in the tattoo parlor. Um, where I was like, would that be interesting? Kind of put this subject matter in this position, and that's where the barbed wire kind of came from.
Hmm.
And I thought about the fence, and again, we're going back to alienation and the idea of like feeling alien from an area you live in, or alien yourself. And so to have this bird's eye view, and now I'm thinking more um, to have the fencing. You're looking at it from a different perspective, like from through a fence, like a keyhole in a way. Um, and I go back to like Degas, the keyhole.
Hmm.
With his drawings, his pastel drawings. But that kind of came into play, like where it doesn't necessarily look like tattoo flash, but that was also on my mind. But also this idea of like looking through a keyhole, or a framing device, and so that's where it kind of and then also like the barbed wire of a fence, and so that's where that kind of came from. So all these different things were coming into play. I did chose kind of the pen because of that flash, the idea of like this tattoo flash, or from and printmaking,
Hmm.
um, and then this interpretation of these two figures. That's how that came to be.
That's so cool. I love
Okay.
hearing all the different references
So I don't. Yeah.
from.
I don't. It was really um an intimate subject for me. I have lived with those the imagery for so long, and I wanted to do something nice and dedicate. Like a
Mhm.
reinterpretation of it. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's so cool. I'm just like blown away by all the references, like you were saying, from like the Degas to the flash tattoo to the story of the, like with the iconic
As
painting,
Aztec warrior and the
the
princess.
Aztec
Yeah, and the
warrior and the
story is really it's like
princess.
a Romeo and Juliet story and very poetic and sad and obviously it references the volcanoes in Mexico City. So very
Mhm.
powerful, very um, historical too, and just in our culture, very prominent image. And so it was really nice to kind of do something a reinterpretation of it.
Hmm.
So,
I also think it's interesting that you were talking about they wanted it to make it look like she was almost like floating
mhm,
and this sort of like alien, sort of just like, oops, sorry, not me hitting this, like, but just sort of like the idea of like having her like levitate and like
mhm.
it makes me think of like you were saying like the angel and like not of
Yeah,
grounded.
yeah, and I chose that. There was originally I had the night a different sketch where they were there in front in like a city in the city like
Hmm.
a contemporary city.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was very outer worldly, and that's what
Okay.
I was trying to go for. Like and not like having like a city skyline kind of thing going, like a and having them there floating in space. And I was like, no, I don't. It changed. It just changed over. Ideas change, concepts change, and I like more idea of the silhouette of
Yeah.
the fencing and the barbed wire. But her hair, if you know, like her hair's floating,
Mm-hmm.
or like it's laying, but it's supposed to also look like blood in a way, and it's
Ah.
enveloping um, the Aztec warrior,
Mm-hmm.
and as he's in a fetal position. So those little things I thought about and I put together, and maybe it's not always like immediate that you see, but I think when you stare at it,
Yeah.
that's what I'm going for. If you stare at it enough, you'll see it, the little secrets.
I think that with a lot of those things, I feel like you might not consciously know it, but subconsciously you'll understand some of these little moments, especially
Yeah,
if if you are aware of these references, or if you're not. Like, I don't know. I think it's just things that like you were saying, like the longer you stare at it, the more you think about it, the more you're like, oh, okay. And I'm sure that now folks hearing this, they're gonna want to look back at it and be like, oh, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah, I think, and we may talk about great art, what makes art great, is the ability to go look at it again and have you're always gonna have an experience with art, your first impression, or they say your, the first 3 seconds or whatever,
Right.
um, but, like, to come back to it and to see something different that, or maybe you come back in a different frame of mind, like, you go out and smoke, you come in, "Oh, I see something these or, oh, I interpret it, oh, I go have a drink," like, I like that too. I like that when people could come and, um, stare at something that, for a while, and these little secrets come out, and I
Hmm.
and I do try to have an effort and put effort into those sorts of things in my art. So, I think it's fun. I think it's
Okay.
fun, yeah.
Did you have any hesitation with touching such a iconic image like that? Was there anything of you sort of like being like, oh, will people like this or not, or I don't know, anything that came to mind in regards to because it
Y
is an iconic image.
Yeah, I was more hoping that people would that know of that the story and how it relates to, the volcanoes in Mexico City and this, imagery, that that they could see that what I was doing, like, "Oh, they did it differently. They did it
Hmm.
it's a little it has been done many times, but, like, or they tried something different,"
Okay.
and that's kind of, what I'm going and then maybe, appreciate the, "Oh, they drew it well," or something.
Right.
If they don't if all this symbolism and all this other things that I've been talking about, those keyhole, like, that's okay if people don't see it immediately. If they just come and see it, that's a nice drawing. Like, that's good enough for me. And that's just art in general. People are gonna
Yeah.
get different things from it. But there have been people that I feel have gotten that, like, and usually they'll tag me, they'll take the picture and they'll tag me, and I feel like those are the ones that kind of have that appreciation,
Hmm.
which is I'm grateful. This is good.
The girls that get it, get it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, for sure get that. Oh, I love. Um, Something that I was also gonna say is, when Emmanuel and I were like creating the space and figuring out where it all went, I thought it was so beautiful how just like naturally some of the artists went sort of a very like alien space and
Yeah.
alien sort of in terms of like identity and politics and things of that
Yep.
nature.
Mhm. Mm.
And with yours, it seemed exactly like it did have that sort of like, I don't know, just like space, celestial, just like you were saying, like that floatingness of it.
Yeah, and it did start with this kind of, like, this space of, like, this interpretation of something about the border and the
Mhm.
fencing, and especially, like, now, like, this deep like, this, um, uh moving massive amount of people for, especially if you're born here, like this conversation of putting them on the other side of this fence.
Mhm.
And originally, like, when I thought about it being in a city space, the point I was trying to make was like, if I had a fencing and see this like this beautiful thing that happened, this miracle or something, of these I forms floating in a space, and you threw it away. You're on the other side of the fence, and so that's kind of another thing I was trying to
Mm.
make, if that makes sense. Where I've thought about that before, um, where it's like a divide, and that's where I kind of
Mhm.
had this big explanation on the title card of, like, it's about this, and like about this separation, and it's not immediately noticeable, and it's not like, I did mention it's kind of a framing device, but it was more about, like, that keyhole, this aspect of this thing happening, and you're on the other side, so there's that too.
Interesting. That is a very, yeah, thing of like, just because of this fence, you're gonna just deny this whole, I don't know.
Experience, or this
Mhm.
heritage, this historical, um uh no, like, this beautiful story, that, uh and you're just throwing it on the, like, it
Mhm.
just doesn't make sense to me. Um, and it's interesting time, and I felt like it was relevant to what's happening right now.
But absolutely is. Every day it's more and more relevant.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. Is this part of a series you're doing of reimagining other stories, or is this just sort of like a theme that you just like exploring?
I have done, yeah, I've done a lot of these like kind of reinterpretations. Even
Mhm.
the last Cheech group show, I did a interpretation of a Botticelli painting
Mm.
of um the Primavera paint, and where I put it, I was referencing like where I'm from,
Mhm.
for in San Bernardino, in this liquor store down the street from my grandma's house that we would always hang around in, and um, yeah, it's more about this childhood story and trying to interpret it with this historical uh, iconography,
Mhm.
historical from art, and then reinterpret it in a contemporary environment. So that other thing where we talked about putting these floating figures in the space of a city, I was like, I already kind of did it, you know.
Yeah.
So now, what can I do? Something that's different. That's where like the idea of the
Mhm.
fencing and the keyhole came into be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't. They kind of just are. I want to say I have this. Um, uh, That's what I wanna keep doing. It's more like that I'm happy to do these reinterpretations because I've
Okay.
these are things I've always enjoyed. These paintings that have inspired me. And they kind of going back to some of these physical sculptures, the bags, the similar process of taking a historical iconography and putting them in the contemporary things,
Mhm.
about childhood or like this, food. Um and it's kind of playful, and I do want it to be playful and silly, and I may have a bit fun with it too. But there's also that serious part,
Right.
that was very meaningful to me. It's always they're all meaningful to me. So yeah, I feel like I don't ever want to like stop doing it. Like, and I see myself making plenty more, you know. So yeah,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm like, it's a beautiful piece. I really love also all the use of the like the negative space around it. I think it's very lovely the way it's like
oh yeah,
framed
thank you.
also within the frame. I think it's very, very lovely. And like another thing I was gonna say is again, just like by the way everyone was just doing it, like it was just so beautiful seeing yours and then right next to it was Myra's with the the
That's
neon
right. Yeah.
sign and they were both
Mm-hmm.
like
Was
similar tones, and it almost looked like I don't know, it's just like a very beautiful like way that they were all just like talking, and I think that's
absolutely
something
yeah.
just like so interesting. Is just like we're all doing our own things, but like there's like this certain little I don't know, we're all speaking the same
Yeah,
language.
absolutely.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
hmm And I there are so many beautiful pieces that everybody made, and it's a very poetic and powerful exhibition, and I was very happy to be a part of it, and thankful
Yeah.
for you both for inviting me. Yeah, I was just everybody, all amazing artists, and I hope that everybody makes a concentrated effort to like follow them and support them, and um, in the ways that you can, even just liking their post, that's
Yeah.
enough. That's the, that's something, to support the artists that are there, it's it's helpful,
Oh,
also.
100%. Literally
Yeah,
just
thank you.
support the arts, y'all.
All amazing artists. I'll continue. Yeah.
Where do you see yourself uh moving forward from here?
Um,
Like is
Continue.
there
Yeah, I'm thankful that again I'm at a point in my life where I do have kind of these rotating kind of ideas, and that's always a good thing to like have a practice, and that was a big part of the grad program too. Was like you're always making work, and the idea
Mhm.
was your prep the ideas you're going to continue after school is you have this practice, and it's I don't I feel like I'm gonna that my personal challenge is just to make art for the rest of my life, like to
Mhm.
have this practice and to continue to make work. And I'm just thankful that I do have ideas that I'm going to continue and make, like have something I'm working on this week and the next week after that. And it's nice, and I'm having fun with it, and I'm happy for that. Where I don't, thankfully, knock on wood, I don't have a writer's block right now.
Mhm.
But also, it's like I remember when I was 19, 20. I didn't have any ideas. I didn't have any like I was just drawing stuff off like I was still doing what I was doing as a child, like drawing um, models off the magazines and stuff.
Mhm.
And it, I- it I feel like that journey, yeah, I didn't get an art. I didn't get to fulfill the art center dream, or I didn't get into animation. Like all those things um, happen for a reason, but like it led me to this point in my life where I'm able to make work that I'm happy with, and I'm able to share, and I'm happy. That's good enough
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Period.
Hmm.
I always say whenever shit like that happens, I'm like, you know what? This is character development.
Absolutely, yeah. Character, yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. It'll come.
Mhm.
It'll, especially as an artist, it'll come. Be reinterpreted again.
Right.
So, you
When they
know,
make the documentary about this will be
exactly. Yeah.
a key point that they can have be like, oh, this, da, 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 you know? Like it's always adding to it.
Yeah, so I'm encouraging of young artists too. I'm also, we haven't talked about it. Like I'm in education now, and or I teach at Cal State, and I'm thankful I'm able to be at this point in my life where I'm able to give back and support artists, and especially young artists, because it's crucial, and the world needs more artists, and continue what you're doing. Anything, whatever makes you happy at the end of the day.
I wanted to ask you more about that, but I was like, I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about school and professor and sort of
Oh
like
yeah,
how
please,
is
yeah,
that
please, whatever kind of questions
like
you have.
I'm just so curious, how is that like being on the other end of that from no longer being the student, but now you are the instructor, you are the one. I don't know, like
Yeah, yeah,
how do you carry that?
that was interesting because, I mean, I think when you're in college and you kind of remember the good teachers, and
Mm,
I hope everybody has a good experience, and like I remember my instructor, like the ones, and I remember the bad one, the anime, like
right.
the one that felt like I would never do that. Like I had to learn, and I think when you start working other job, like you just um you learn how you basically you how you would want to be if you were a student, or you think of
Mhm.
yourself in their shoes. And so I kind of, when I it was interesting because in the program you got to teach your third year, if you wanted to, and I
Oh,
did.
okay.
I
So
got
that
to
was
teach
part of the
painting.
program.
Yeah. So
Okay.
and you have the TA for your professor of choice at first,
Mhm.
like the medium that you want to do, and I want to do painting. Actually, want to do painting and sculpture, but painting was the one I chose, and so, and unfortunately, that was during the pandemic, my third year, and I actually had to do a Zoom class, and it wasn't very good, and I feel very bad. Like you can't teach painting on Zoom. Like it's hard. Like you need
Right.
to be there in the physical space. That's it. Like you have to see you have to. There's so much you cannot do with the camera, a Zoom camera,
Yeah.
when it comes to instruction. Also, the institutional critique, that is something that I feel like has developed me, and that's the thing between school and not.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's good and bad, but then it really does has an effect on you as an artist. Um,
I'm so curious, how do you handle critiques? Like, how
oh,
do you do your
I'm so
crits? Like,
sensitive and
like
I
as a professor, how do
yeah.
you conduct
Oh well,
like I want to know your process because crits are always some of the most stressful. I literally would 9 times out of 10 go home crying because of
yeah. Are
how
you?
intense they can fucking be, especially if the professor was not, I don't know, facilitating in a way that was like constructive and we're just kind of like letting kids be like, yeah, you guys want to tear each other apart today? Go for it.
Yeah, and that's the other bad thing about the critique is like or even an artist visit, like where you're all ears, you're desperate to hear information from
Yeah.
somebody because you worked on that piece or those pieces and for weeks to months, and like they could be having a bad day. They drop their coffee on the way and now they're mad and they're gonna unfortunately take it on you. Like that
Yeah.
happens, and it like, or they're in a they broke up or something, like people come in with like an attitude, and or they don't like you, like and it's
Right.
like there's all those things that they don't, that are part of the critique, that maybe don't have anything to do with your art, and they're that's you kind of have to do your best to kind of filter stuff out,
Okay.
take what works, and then I did. I wouldn't say, like, I don't like I did have some negative one, like plenty of negative. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was more like these people, especially if they were colleagues or like professionals or other instructors saying certain things to me, I'd be like, they're not trying to like hurt me. They're not like they're saying it for a reason, especially if it's a repetitive thing that they're saying,
Mm.
or multiple people are saying a repetitive. Try this. That's actually kind of how my senior thesis show came about to be. I'm like, so many people are saying the same thing. Well, what for me not to be defiant or like just fuck them all. I want to do what I want to do. I want to do all those paintings. But
Mhm.
then it's like if I didn't say, you know what, so and so is not trying to hurt me. They're not trying to hurt me. Like they're just saying it because it's a response, like what they're giving their honest opinion, but also like trying to encourage me to do something different. And that's where that I'm making the work now.
Okay.
All the work I'm making has been come from those type of critiques. But you do have to filter out like, oh well, they're probably like somebody came from LA and they're stuck in traffic and they have a bad attitude and they're kind of like, what do you want? Like I remember an artist came and looked at the walls in my studio and she was like, you have nothing of interest and value on these walls. Like and I'm like, what? Like and he like
The door
and
is
so
that way,
no, it
actually.
was kind of it was, oh, I got like 20 more minutes with this person. And, and so oh yeah, there's that one's hurtful. But then it's like, well, at the end of the day, also, and what I've gotten from art making in the grad program experience was that like you may at the end of the day make work that makes you happy, and
Mhm.
also to find your tribe, to find there you'll make work and people respond to it, and there will be it's not for everybody. Like you can't please everybody, you can't make everybody happy. You shouldn't have to. Um, and that's fine. Like, and you don't have to really. It's just
Mhm.
at the end of the day, make work that makes you happy, and people will gravitate towards it. The tribe will come.
Right.
So, that to me, with that the gratitude, like again, that person that said that they didn't
Knew
like my
nothing
work on the
about you.
wall, like it's like, well, I don't make work for them, and they'll probably never like my work. Like who cares? But
Right.
what is interesting though, is that if you do get into education, like you may have to work with that person. You're like,
You're
or
not
you
my
may have to. You
coworker.
might go, and so that kind of plays with your colleagues or one thing I'd also like to say is just to be nice to people. Like
Mm.
to be like just in anything you get into life, just do your best to be nice and it comes back somehow, some way where in the art world there's so many different high personalities or like kind of like these intense personalities, which is great. But like, like when we all get to like support each other as best you can, like people's posts and maybe try to show up to people's exhibitions, but just be nice and say hi, and that's not too much to ask for, but it always comes back. I feel like it's good vibes and comes back to you.
Mhm. It is a very small world too.
It is very small. Yeah,
It's a
absolutely. Yep.
very
Hmm.
small, and you come to find out, oh, wow, okay, nice seeing you again.
Yep. Hmm. Hmm. Or like that situation will have like might happen like where y- you had a bad day, you might have said something to somebody, and then you find out that that person has a position over you, and you're trying to get a job, and they're the like that. That's just life, and it's like that's oh maybe I should have been nicer, or I shouldn't have said something, or
Right.
and I don't mean to like also like to um guard your emotions, but just like and I think in general, like if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I don't know. Professional.
Be
It's okay. Yeah,
cordial,
be cordial. Be cordial. It's
be
okay to not like word. Yeah,
respectful,
be respectful, but there's a time and place for things. And
time
yeah,
and
like,
place.
this isn't a critique. Or you don't you don't need to say all that to me. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Oh my god. Okay. Slay, is there anything upcoming that you would like to let the audience know?
Um, yeah, there actually I have a piece at the Ontario Art Museum, and it's a current
Ooh.
print show, which is nice. And it's actually going to end in a few weeks. We're doing a workshop for printmaking. I love printmaking. I encourage people to try printmaking to carve with linoleum. Um, and it's a fun process. But also, I'm also going to be in the next Cheech group show with the East Side Art
Oh,
House,
you're in
which
that
was
one
fun.
too?
Yeah,
Oh
so
my god,
that's
me
also
too!
yeah, so it's not yeah, it's another great collection of talented artists, and so I'm excited to see what everybody makes.
What are you making?
Um,
I mean,
we
by
had
the time
like
this goes up,
oh yeah, it'll
I'm
probably
like,
what
what
was
is
I?
Via? No, actually, by the time this goes up, the
Well,
show will not have been up yet.
okay, the idea was to kind of take because it was about community and
Right.
that space in that the East Side area, and I had already referenced like a similar community to where I grew up in, and something about the park and
Hmm.
like where I feel like when I first went there to the East Side Art House, and people were talking about it's there's a gang there, or like it's scary, and you don't go at night, like all these weird. And I'm like, but I grew up and like it's they're just families there, like there's this weird perception
Hmm.
that's not accurate. It's like these fears that aren't really there. And so like when I was referencing these works that I about the area I grew up in San Bernardino, where there's similarities.
Okay.
So when they brought up the prompt to kind of like talk to a community member and to make work, share the stories, and that's similar. That's kind of what my process was, but it was mostly actually about perhaps working with like a garment, a work attire, or and to do like an ink drawing, or but that's kind of I'm still it's developing, and so that was a process, something a little bit different than what I've done. It may change. It may change. It might, but it's something about like this
Girl's doing
progression.
2 weeks.
Oh yeah, no, no, no. It'll get done. No, okay, I know. It'll it,
I mean, who
it'll
am I
be
to say?
fine.
I'm not even done with mine.
It'll be fine. Yeah,
Mine.
it'll get done.
That's
Be ready to
cool.
hang.
I'm excited to see it then. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the next one. So I'm happy to um see everybody's pieces.
Me too. Okay. Well, let the folks know where they can find you. If you love his work, absolutely put him in your show. Support artists. My number one rule while they are alive and here, don't wait till they're fucking dead. So please support them, put them in your shows, and yeah, tell them where they can reach you.
Actually, on Instagram, on the gram, Briar Rosa underscore. You can
Mm-hmm.
find me. Check out my work, please. I have a website, briarrosa.com, and which needs to be updated. And I hope I'd love to see you at any the art functions in the area, Riverside, Redlands, Ontario, San Bernardino, in the Inland, any place in the Inland Empire. Hopefully, we run into each other and come up and say hi, and I'll say hi
Yeah.
back.
Go and say hi. They're very sweet. And yeah, y'all can find me everywhere. Art Perry, the podcast, Red Thoughts Perry, on all social medias. My website, artperry.com, and my portfolio, picasso.com. Um, yeah. Thank you so much for being
No,
here. I
thank you for having
appreciate
me.
you.
Oh, it
Oh
was
my God,
fun.
thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Woo!
Yay, that was fun.